Welcome to another edition of the CWE webcast. I'm Hotshot Danny Duggan, and I'm joined by Garbage Man Rob, the Garber Snake Jordan Garber, and our special guest this week, Mike Arnott.
Thank you for having me.
Do you have a special moniker these days, or are you strictly Mike Arnott?
It's Michael James Arnott.
All right. You're looking sharp. I think you're the fanciest dressed man to appear on the CWE webcast.
Oh, that's good.
Dressed up a step above me in my fanny pack and Zubaz here.
Fancy in its own way.
Let's talk some professional wrestling. Big things happening in WWE. The brand split is now official. It started last night, I guess technically, as it was the first Monday night without the SmackDown crew. Did you guys get a chance to check out Raw last night?
I didn't know. I had a chance to check out the last half of it. It was pretty good.
What's your overall thoughts on the new direction of Monday Night Raw?
I liked it. I mean, it's still early. I mean, obviously it's brand new, so they're putting a big focus on it, but with the way that the product was going on Raw and how it felt like it flowed very, very well. There was lots of wrestling. There was also a lot of segments too, or interview, like post-match interviews and stuff like that.
So I also did some like in-ring interviews after the matches and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's what I was
thinking. So different, yeah.
Kind of like a UFC feel almost to that extent, where it's like, you know, they win, like Sasha Banks won the championship, and then they would talk to her in the ring. So I like it though. I mean, compared to like just having a big mix of everyone doing the same matches, it's different. It feels new.
I applaud those competitors that can do those after-match promos. Anytime I have to do them, like blowing up and I'm like dying for air, having to try to compose myself and speak into the microphone clearly. It did feel like a new feel. They also did the UFC or the old school main event entrance as well, intros for the main event, which I don't know if they've been doing other than title matches. I know they've been doing them for like the big title matches on pay-per-views and on Raw, but last night for Roman Reigns and Finn Balor, they did the in-ring intros as well, so I wonder if that's going to be something that's part of the new direction and new feel for the show. New graphics, a lot of new talent. Mike, what were your thoughts on the show?
I've really enjoyed watching WWE the past few months leading up to the brand split. There's a lot of new talent, a lot more focus on character development and in-ring work. It's become a lot more watchable lately for me. My interest in WWE had been waning for some years now, but I'm really starting to enjoy it again. Roman Reigns last night, I thought he put on a really badass performance. I'm really enjoying where his character is going now. I think maybe this suspension was what he needed, because he seems to have a lot more intensity now. That's
a little more facial hair as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you think they're making the right decision? It's tough to say because there's always going to be that speculation on the internet about rumors and why things are happening, but he was kind of the top dog, and he seemingly has come back, and I don't know if he's being pushed down a notch or if that's the plan, just kind of move him in a different direction, but he didn't capture the world title upon his return. He didn't capture the number one contendership spot for one of the featured matches at SummerSlam, which tells me he's now going to be in the mid-card or undercard at best. Is that something to be expected moving forward with him after the suspension and what many are calling a failure is him working on top?
I'm sure they're going to quote-unquote hold him down a little bit. I don't think that it's going to be a permanent thing where they're going to keep him on the mid-card, but I mean, I wouldn't say it's quite obvious, but I mean, like from fan reaction, it's clear that a lot of the dislike for him is at pretty much an all-time high. So I mean, kind of just rebranding him almost in a sense, and seeing where they can go from here with him. So.
And even working that match with Balor last night, the fans were distinctively behind Balor, who hasn't been on Monday Night Raw before, and against Roman Reigns. So he does have a very passionate fan base against him, but they haven't pulled the trigger, and that's kind of been the gimmick they've been doing with him for the last little bit. He's not a good guy, he's not a bad guy, he's the guy. Well, he's not the guy anymore, and he doesn't have the championship, so what direction do you take him in now? He's got to go one way or the other, I would imagine, or you're going to get lost in
or something.
Yeah. What do you think that the next move for Roman Reigns is, Mike?
I think that's tough. I don't think that they should turn him heel because I think that would backfire. I think that's kind of what everybody wants. But I think if they maybe go the route that they have with John Cena and they just let this play out on its own, let it develop a little more organically, I think they'll have. They already have a huge star on their hands, but they're going to have an even hotter star. In the future, if they let it play out organically.
Maybe you can give us your opinion, because we talked about this a few weeks, many weeks here on the podcast, about how in 2016, guys are booked as baby faces and heels, but the crowd reaction varies guy to guy, and guys that are booked as very strong, distinct heels are over with the crowd and get babyface reactions, but they still let them stay true to being their heel selves, and they just continue on with the program. Are we entering an era where the traditional babyface and heel is thrown out the window, and you just let performers kind of stick to true to their character and who they are at all times, and let the audience decide, opposed to force feeding them down one way or another?
I hope so. I'm not sure where, I don't know what goes on in the minds of those that control WWE, but it seems as if it's going in that trend, and they would be wise to allow that to occur. I mean, look at how Stone Cold Steve Austin took off. It was an organic thing. Look at the New Day right now. I mean, they were heels, and they're huge baby faces now, and they, like you said, they haven't changed their character at all. That's what needs to happen.
I think it's something that has to be considered, because in a day and age where fans are so tuned into everything that's going on that it becomes very apparent very quickly, or reports are leaked very quickly on who the next guy is that's in line for a push, or the direction people are going, and if the fans don't like that direction, they're very quick to go into business for themselves, so to speak, and kind of try to sway it the way they want it and let their voice be heard. So if you kind of create a TV show feel in the sense that these are the characters, these are the traits they have, and the people decide, you can have a whole world of possibilities with different characters intertwining with each other and creating intriguing television, where in years past and for decades, if you're a babyface, you wrestled a heel, and vice versa. You did the occasional babyface match, but you never saw a heel wrestle a heel. It was very, very rare that would happen. But that's something you can see now. They did that, when the Shield were heels, they would, intertwine with the Wyatts, and the electricity in the building was crazy. It's just something you're not accustomed to seeing. But now, with the given circumstance of how characters are booked and portrayed, you can, mingle these guys together, and you get, some different depth to the story, some different depth to the personality and characters, and it creates interesting television. And a lot of mainstream television, whether it be, hour shows on NBC or sitcoms, a lot of heels are booked as likable characters in modern day television. It's not out of the ordinary to do that. So if wrestling followed that trend, I don't think it would be out of the ordinary.
There's no bigger example of that right now than Seth Rollins. I mean, obviously they're trying to book Seth as that heel guy, but when you're putting out a WWE 24 special on him about his road back to recovery from his ACL tear, it's hard not to sympathize for him and kind of make him a likable guy. So it's kind of just like sending that mixed message. But as WWE continues on pushing him as a heel, it's interesting to see the fan reaction and how WWE just doesn't want to make him that good guy or babyface that he's supposed to be, and just push him out there as a bad guy still.
And I think it's a different era now. People don't necessarily boo somebody because they dislike that person's character or personality. They'll boo somebody because they don't like the booking of that character. They don't like the booking of that angle. It's a completely different era. I mean, you can't really bring in, unless you're going to start bringing in radical Islamist terrorists as an angle. I mean, people aren't going to be booing the characters per se.
And if you're too good of a heel, the people appreciate it. If you're too sly on the microphone with your insults and being an asshole, the people get behind it and they're in on it too, and they appreciate it. So it's tough. It really, really is tough. It's either you have to kind of embrace it and just book characters and personalities unique to themselves, or you just have to completely flop it and the traditional babyface is now a heel and traditional heels are now babyfaces, because you can't you can't be, white meat babyface anymore and get that sincere reaction. You get eaten alive in a lot of markets. So that has changed. And the style of wrestling is so progressive now, and WWE has embraced the modern day style of professional wrestling. And if you're a heel and you're doing really cool, impressive moves, you're going to get cheered. We've seen it for years, on the independents, and guys would get shit for going into business for themselves as heels, hitting super cool moves and really cool dives. And if you're a babyface working a heel like that, you're not getting over that night because the fans going to cheer the guy doing the really cool moonsault from the top rope to the floor. Yeah. And with the way that the product has changed and the style has changed to be like that, they're producing matches from opening bell to end of bell with heels working that style of wrestling. It's not the way it used to be where heels just kicked and punched and choked and eye gouged. So they're going to get people that are going to get behind what they're doing. So it's really, really tough to find a heel and make people sincerely hate them.
I think at this point in time, you can just eliminate heels and baby faces and just focus on character development. That's the way I see it going in the future.
And I think that's the best way to do it because, me personally as a character, I find my best angles as a performer are when I'm intertwining with another character and personality that has different traits that are different than this guy and different than that guy. That's what makes each angle and each match interesting, is when somebody is very distinct on who they are and what they stand for and what their beliefs are. And that's how you create, compelling story.
Yeah, that's strong personalities. That's compelling television.
So then how do you present it from here on in? Say if you were to debut someone that WWE has never heard of before, like just fresh, how would you bring them out there in terms of a personality or like a character? Do you bring them out there and let the audience decide like how they react to them, or in terms of like if you want to eliminate babyface and heel, how would you bring someone out there to debut? Because a lot of these guys that are debuting on the main roster now, they're obviously been on the indies for how long, so we already know who they are and their story and everything. But if you were to bring someone just completely brand new, how do you do that?
I think anytime a character on any type of entertainment is written, whether it be TV or movie, you write with the intent for them to get a certain reaction. So I think you still have to go about everyday business doing as such, going, okay, we're bringing in the Garbage Snake to work an angle with John Cena. We want him to garner this type of reaction, so this is how we're going to present him. And you hope to God that that's the way it goes, but you need to be prepared for it to go other avenues and be able to adjust accordingly. I think that's where the business is going to change a lot too, where the best booked angles were always ones that were mapped out over long periods of time, and you knew where you were ending, and you kind of worked backwards. I don't know if you can necessarily do that the same way anymore, because crowds are so unpredictable, and who gets over is so unpredictable now, that you almost have to go a week-to-week basis or a month-to-month basis, because somebody's reaction or their popularity with the crowd can change so quickly.
Yeah.
So I think one thing that could be done would be to introduce characters more slowly, instead of producing a vignette and 2 weeks from now you have wrestler X coming in making his debut. Treat it more like any other television program, and how do you introduce a character on any other TV show? They come in, they make a cameo, and then they'll make another few appearances, and slowly over time they'll get more time on the show. And that's kind of how you need to do it, because that gives you the opportunity to feel out the audience.
That's definitely true. Something that I have found very interesting with the way they're presenting the product now, and specifically Raw, is they debuted NXT talent. Finn Balor debuted and was immediately over with the audience, which speaks volumes for how far of a reach the WWE Network has, because he's only viewed on NXT, or has been for the last 2 years, but he's been introduced to that audience, and they're firmly behind him, they're aware of who he is, they're excited to see him. Sasha Banks was somebody else that was an NXT product that instantly jumped on the roster, huge reaction. Bayley with her cameo appearance at Battleground as well. So people are coming in kind of set up in NXT already with some popularity. And it's been really interesting to me to see that, because that tells me that their core audience is watching NXT when that brand was probably first developed. I don't think that was the expectation. I don't think people assumed that it would have that much drawing power or star power to it, where people would be able to jump from NXT and be big stars immediately, I imagine the formula was, okay, this is the developmental. When somebody's ready, we'll debut them and we'll, work them through the chain and work them through the process the way we always have.
Yeah.
But they can now take, say, a Finn Balor, who has never appeared on WWE programming or any major programming for any other national company, and he worked the main event of Raw and is now going on to main event SummerSlam, and people aren't batting an eyelash to it, and he fits right in. What's your perception on that trade or change in the business?
Interesting to say the least. I mean, I'm sure that a lot of the old school guys are probably not fans of that, where you gotta pay your dues, so to speak, right? Especially on the main roster. But it is a very interesting jump. But I think that he has earned it in a way. I mean, making that transition from NXT main event, and again, I agree with you, where that it's just the scope of NXT. I don't think that they ever thought that it would be as large as it is now. So with them reaching that many people and having that reaction on Monday for Raw, he could just easily slip in there and everything's good to go. So I mean, I'm all for it. I like it.
My complaint, me being kind of an old school traditionalist in terms of the way I like to watch my wrestling and the way I like my wrestling booked, is you have somebody that's going to be a very big star for the company, and that's very clear at this point.
Yeah.
I think the problem with the way he was debuted is, where does he go from here?
That's right.
Main event of Raw, he beat the guy who was just world champion. Now he's immediately in the main event of the second biggest show of the year. You can only stay there or go down.
Yeah.
So I think you're losing a lot of valuable time and a lot of valuable story that can be told, and mileage you can get of him starting at the beginning or starting at the bottom. I'm not saying he needs to come in and be working through jobbers or going to the bare bones formula of building a star.
Yeah.
But I think you can really get a lot more mileage out of introducing him and having him work his way up through the tiers of talent
Yeah.
that are available on a 3-hour program, to then next year be in a position where the fans are hungry and willing to see that. Because once you've reached the top of the mountain, anything other than that's going to look like a step below. So you're going to look like you're having this hot debut, you're in a world title match, the second biggest show. And what's he going to be doing 3-4 months from now? He can't be main eventing every show. He can be. He might be lucky enough to, but anything other than that is going to look like a step down, when I think they could have got a lot more mileage out of him working a lot of those great young talent they have on the undercard, and then working his way up to the Chris Jerichos and mid-card guys, and then working his way to the main event. Am I wrong in thinking that?
And I don't think so. I mean, long term, yes, it does hurt over the years. I mean, one thing that we do have to remember is that, these guys who are drawing on NXT are, grizzled vets on the indies or from TNA, where they're already 30 plus years old. So realistically, their shelf life is, how long do you think? 5, 6, 7 years before, they hit 40.
So is it a matter of that? Like, let's try to get as much out of them as quick as we can?
I think so. I mean, in terms, think of who's the big stars in NXT right now? Samoa Joe, Shinsuke Nakamura. I mean, a lot of those guys are, over 30, right? And so, if you're starting them from the bottom and you're trying to build them up again, 2-3 years, if they,
Don't get hurt.
yeah, it plays to the part where, a lot of the fans now are just, it has to be right away, like hot-shotting everyone, where that, they don't want to make it organic. It's just, these guys are so good, so we have to put them at the top. But if you put everyone at the top, then who's going to be at the bottom, right? So, old school, yes, I agree, but at the same time, because these guys are, old and their shelf life is pretty limited, put them up now where they have that star power, that drawing power, and then a couple years from now, it'll just.
I just feel with that cycle, it's like they're expecting to have to recycle guys very quickly, and they don't expect them to have any longevity. Because in a day and age where they have so much programming every single week, and we've talked about this many times here on the podcast about how wrestlers become stale so quickly because you're seeing them every week, year after year after year, and there's guys like Cena that have been on TV for 12 years that you've seen every Monday, every Tuesday, or Fridays when it airs. Guys like Kane, Big Show, Ziggler, Orton, guys that have been there for so long. They're still incredibly talented people, but they're often not discarded or just not given the credit they deserve because people are so accustomed to seeing him. It's not special anymore. So when I see somebody like that, I think, well, if he's working the top guys immediately, how do you go from selling him versus Roman Reigns on SummerSlam to now working, an undercard program with the rest of the roster later on, it's going to be like, well, we've seen him here, now we're. I think
him down.
Yeah, I think you can get a lot more out of getting some mileage out of him, or anybody for that matter, by making the most out of it. Because in 3 years from now, if he's still working the same top guys he's working today, you're gonna be like, oh, that Finn Balor guy again in the main event. No matter how good he is, because that's just in the way our society is now.
Like you were saying, I really agree with your point. It's like it's good to see Finn Balor on Raw. It's good to see him on the main roster, and it's good to be seeing him compete for the Universal title, which we'll probably discuss later. But imagine if he, even 6 months at least, worked his way up to that position. How much more excited would the fans be then? You know what I mean? It's just kind of like a debut, and now all of a sudden he's in the title picture. Fans are excited, but I just believe that they would be more excited if they seen that long, like had that 6 month kind of way to work his way up, and then winning the belt. Then everyone would be more excited, in my opinion.
I think injuries may play a part in it too. I mean, look what happened with Daniel Bryan when he came back. Well, it was a couple months, and boom, he's on the shelf. He's retired. The guys are working a style now that increases the possibility of injuries. I mean, and maybe that is their thought process. They need to get that mileage right away. Yeah.
And that does make a lot of sense, because we mentioned that before as well, that guys are going to get hurt working this style as much as they are now. Like, there's no way to consistently work at the tempo they're working night in and night out, and guys not to get banged up and beat up. So that very much could be the attitude. All right, let's get as much money and mileage out of these guys as we can, because the hourglass is tipped, and it's going to be a matter of time until they blow out a knee, blow out a shoulder, and we'll have to cycle somebody else in. And that's kind of how I felt it was in NXT when I first saw the product, when they first introduced it, and I saw them allowing guys to work this high-octane style that's been kind of outlawed in WWE for so many years. I was thinking that was exactly what I thought. Like, if they're letting them do this, it's because they think they're just going to cycle in the next indie darling if one gets hurt, and just keep on shuffling them through. And that's what I felt the mentality was when I was watching it, because there's no shelf life to the guys doing a lot of the maneuvers they're doing and taking the risks they are. Someone is going to get hurt, so it's a matter of, okay, well, let's let them work that high-octane style for us, but there's another 20, 30 guys out there that work something similar, so if he goes, we'll just grab the next guy on the conveyor belt here. So I think that's it. We're going to take our first break, and we're going to come back and talk the WWE Universe title, which they'll be debuting very shortly.
I go to Muscles by Myers because I trust them.
The staff is phenomenal. You come in, they're always positive, they're always happy to see you.
I walked in there not knowing a thing about supplements, and the staff there showed me everything I need to know.
I lost about 40 pounds and then put on about 10 pounds of muscle.
I've gotten stronger, I have more energy.
I go to Muscles by Myers because they offer great advice, competitive pricing, and they care about helping you achieve your goals.
If I can do it, you can do it.
CWE Canada.ca.
.123approved.ca specializes in first-time car loans and negative equity trades. Regardless of your credit past, we can help you get the financing that best suits your needs. To learn more about 123approved.ca or to see what you qualify for, call 204-444-4123 today.
CWE fans, the action and excitement of Adrenaline is only the beginning. To get the full CWE experience, check us out on YouTube. There, you can catch up on Adrenaline and classic CWE television episodes. Watch The Snake Bit with Jordan Garber, the weekly CWE podcast, promos, our event center, and so much more. Subscribe to the CWE YouTube channel today.
What does he have that I don't have?
Zubaz.
Rooms and accommodations for CWE events provided by the Travel Lodge.
Give your body the edge in one click with musclesbymyers.com. We have sports supplements, vitamins and minerals for all lifestyles and levels of fitness. And call or email for free one-on-one guidance. Smart buyers shop at Myers and musclesbymyers.com.
How's everybody doing today? How do you become a wrestler? The same way you become anything else. You have to go to school and work really, really, really hard.
We are back and we're teaching Jordan Garber how to be G here on the CWE podcast. Back to the WWE brand extension and the split. So many changes are happening and it's fresh and exciting for the wrestling fan. One of those changes being they're introducing the WWE Universe Championship, not to be confused with the Universe of Zach Mercury. This is the Raw brand heavyweight title, much like they did in the early 2000s when they had a title representing each brand. Do you think that's a good idea, or does that devalue the importance of the world title if there's two of them?
Definitely devalues. Yeah, I'm not a fan of it. But I mean, at the same time, it's interesting because, I mean, when you really think about it, like, Roman's already been a 3-time heavyweight champ. Like, Seth's already won it, like, twice, I think. So, I mean, like, these guys who have only been here for a couple years have already had it multiple times in comparison to, you know, old school, where it's like, you know, guys who never got a shot, right, or guys that have held it for how many months?
Well, everyone's been a world champion now.
Yeah, pretty much. So.
Jack Swagger, Alberto Del Rio,
Sheamus is a multiple-time champ, so, I mean,
so it doesn't have the same prestige it did just because it was passed around so much. Kind of like the dying days of WCW when everybody was a champion.
Yeah, and then you're okay. That's true. Yeah, these last couple of months, like that WrestleMania season, like from SummerSlam to WrestleMania, like how many times did that title change? Like it was just, now they're introducing another one, so I wasn't a big fan of this.
You know, I think that the frequent title changes does more to devalue the title than adding another world title. I think if you're going to have two brands, you have to have two world champions. You may as well make them as distinct as possible and try to get a feel of competition between the two brands. So I like seeing another world title.
Could it not add value to having just one world title though if he's defending on both shows, especially now that they're going to have their own individual pay-per-views every month? That being the world champion truly means you are the best. You have to compete on both brands against all comers, defend it twice a month at these big super shows or big pay-per-views that they're doing. So if you're going to be on top of the game, you're the representative of the company as a whole.
I can almost see them going the route of having 3 world titles. You have one for each brand, and then you have a world title or a universe title, whatever you want to call it, that would encompass Raw, SmackDown, and NXT.
So kind of like when they would have, say, a regional champion in each state, and then have an American champion, or each province and have a Canadian champion.
Kind of going kind of sidetracking a little bit. Looking at this Universal title, which we were presented with, everyone who watched Monday Night Raw was introduced to it. I'm a fan of having a title on Raw and SmackDown, again with the separate pay-per-views, but the name is terrible. It sounds like a grade 1er could come up with this. The Universal title. Or someone in grade 1, like, would come up, like, it's ridiculous.
Students in the first grade.
A student in the first grade would come. Yeah, I did. I graduated high school, believe it or not. But
I don't.
We'll need to see the papers on this.
like I was
Norton
saying.
Garber, ladies and gentlemen, the walking condemnation of the Canadian education system.
Grade 1.
Like I was saying, it does sound like a childish title, a universal title. Come on, they could have come up with something way better than that.
I agree. It's for the universe, quote unquote. I mean, come on.
I don't know if I'm sold on it, because I think it devalues saying there's 2 guys that are the best. The world champion is the best guy in the business.
Yes.
So if that man has to defend on Monday night and Tuesday night, so be it. Ric Flair said he defended the title 365 days a year when he was NWA World Champion, flying region to region and putting over or working with the local guy in each area. Unless you're building to a special match every year at WrestleMania where it's champion versus champion, not to unify, but these are the 2 best, and you use it as a gimmick to draw money. I get why they're doing it, because you do need to have a representative of each brand. But I think that's where you have your secondary title become more important. That's where the Intercontinental title steps up and is important to one brand. That's when the United States title steps up and is important and special to that one brand. And then you have the overall title that's circumferencing them all.
Yes, I agree with that. For so long we've always thought of tiers, where you have your U.S. title, and then you have your Intercontinental, and then your World Heavyweight title. Now this rules are wrenching everything, and everyone's. I don't like it.
As long as they keep the brands completely separate, I think it will be okay. I think it will devalue it if we very quickly start seeing guys jump from one program to the other on a regular basis. I know that was quite common when they did it 10 years ago.
Yes.
If it's very strict, if you're a Raw guy, you're on Raw. If you're on SmackDown, you're on SmackDown. You don't start making weird exceptions. And tonight's a special night. We've got so-and-so coming in to be this guy's tag partner. I think there's some value to it. But if guys are very quickly jumping back and forth, then what was the point of having 2 champions when the world champions have been doing it anyways?
Yeah. And I think they will do that just because, if anything, the annual draft will be a bit of a rating spike for them. So they're gonna, they may go that route. And personally, I'd like to see more. I'd like to see wrestling be presented more as a sport. And this goes to your point about having the Intercontinental and the U.S. titles mean something on their respective brands. Why not have divisions within the brand? So you have an Intercontinental division or a United States title division, and they have to a wrestler has to work their way out of that division into the heavyweight division, right? It's a way to make it or present it more as a sport.
Well, that's legitimacy to the title as well. If you have to be ranked in a certain position to at least qualify for a title match, and not anybody can just sign up and have a match because, hey, we need a title match on this episode of SmackDown. So
I think for too long there's been no rhyme or reason to anything wrestling related when it comes to WWE.
No, and I think that was the whole basis of how professional wrestling became sports entertainment. It was based around sport, but with an entertainment genre. So there was legitimacy behind the concept of professional wrestling. There was meaning behind the titles. There was a system in place that made it all tie in together and make sense to the casual person that maybe didn't follow it regularly. These are the rules, these are the regulations, this is why these things happen. And it all made sense. But they are kind of implementing that in a way. Like the Cruiserweight division is now coming back, so there is going to be a set division for that. I'm surprised to see it on Monday Night Raw because SmackDown is supposed to be kind of a wrestling show. I'm curious to see how long it lasts, because they've brought back the cruiserweight division or things similar to it many times over the years, and they very quickly drop it. They don't give it enough time to develop, or it doesn't take too much time at all until top stars that are heavyweights start burying the cruiserweights, and they don't get viewed as unique performers. They're the undercard is how they quickly start getting placed on the show instead of being unique to their own division. But with UFC, the light heavyweights are some of the most exciting fighters and the best drawing fighters on the card. So I think you can promote them as special and unique. I don't know if they'll necessarily be your big main event draw, but they'll have something. They'll have something special that draws them to the show. WCW did a very good job of that for years.
It depends on how they handle it too. I'm curious to see, are they going to bring in outside stars like they did for the Cruiserweight Classic? Are they going to bring these guys in for the division, or is it going to be guys like Heath Slater? Now you're in the Cruiserweight division.
That's a good point. The commercial they used to advertise it was pretty much all Cruiserweight Classic talent, and it's been rumored like Dorado and Cedric Alexander and Kota Ibushi and all those guys were going to get signed up after this was done. So I imagine whoever the last 8 guys are, give or take, that are in the tournament, or the guys they're probably going to focus on and be bringing up to TV, I would think. So I think that'd be the direction they're going. And it's a good concept to do, like, especially with I'm curious to see how it gets over, in the sense that so many of the heavyweight wrestlers now wrestle a cruiserweight style, and that's just kind of the style across the business now. So, for example, a Sami Zayn or a Seth Rollins are being portrayed as main event heavyweight stars now, but they wrestle a cruiserweight style of wrestling. So what's going to make them unique and different from the guys that are maybe 30 pounds lighter doing it?
Nothing really. I mean, how can you make them stand out if they're all doing the same thing?
Especially in a post wellness policy world where there isn't a lot of jacked up heavyweights anymore. Braun Strowman and Big Show and Kane are your heavyweights, and everybody else is like a legitimate cruiserweight now.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I don't know.
Some of the other changes they have made is or we'll see how long it lasts, but last night on Raw they had a couple job matches where a couple local talents were brought in to put over guys on the main roster, and there's talk that this is going to be something that we could see regularly moving forward. For years it was talked about how it was scrapped because they need to have competitive television to entice the fan to stay tuned in and not turn the channel. It really came into prominence during the Monday Night Wars, when they didn't want to give up a time slot to a job match when Nitro could be putting on 2 main event stars and stealing that rating away. Now that we're not in a position where we're going to war every Monday night and wrestling doesn't have that same competitive edge it used to, is it something that could work now?
I absolutely think so. That's one of the things that I missed about wrestling, and this goes back to what we were talking earlier about character development. I mean, that's a great way to develop new characters and introduce them slowly and allow that person to develop their character in a more organic feel. It allows the writers, the company to gauge how the crowd is going to react to them.
Yeah, the good thing too about it is the announcers can put the time in to invest strictly in them, compared to before where it's like 2 WWE guys, so you kind of have to be back and forth. But now it's Braun Strowman crushing this guy, so it's just Michael Cole and Byron Saxton just overplaying the fact that he's just this huge monster, and then he's facing this little midget, and he doesn't stand a chance, and he's gonna get his ass kicked, and everyone knows that. And like, this guy, Braun Strowman, is so huge, and it makes you like, yeah, this guy is a badass, so we have to be scared of him. Gives them that extra, not special feel, but it makes them feel like we're supposed to buy into that character a lot more.
I think a unique way to do it as well, especially that they've opened up and they've started using independent talent as featured talent on a lot of their programs. I don't know if the squash match necessarily has to be a squash match by the definition of what it's become, where a guy gets eaten up for 3 minutes. Why not use the top independent? Like the way they get these guys is whatever city they're in, they hire X amount of extras, and if they happen to need a local talent for a squash, they pick one of the extras, and that's what you'll see. Yep. To make these matches more appealing, instead of a 3-minute squash match, make it a 5 or 6 minute competitive match. But instead of picking the bottom of the barrel, use the top local guys in the area or guys that have independent wrestling name value to them, and throw them in there for 5 to 6 minutes to give a competitive match and still put the WWE guy over, so it's intriguing television and people are going to go, oh hey, so-and-so's on TV tonight. And it's somebody that's qualified and talented and can hold their own and holds a little bit of name to themselves, so people will be excited to see who's being used on Monday night that week. And it'll get people tuning in, you know, at least the underground wrestling fan or the independent wrestling fan. They'll be like, oh cool, this guy was on here from this company, and there's some intrigue to it, and the guy gives a good match, and heck, you might even find a couple guys that are talented that you might end up using more down the road. But I think you can get a little more mileage out of showcasing somebody in a slightly more competitive match that's got a little bit buzz behind them that you don't have under contract, and utilize them to their full potential.
Well, and that's another way you can introduce 2 stars at once. You have your feature performer who you're introducing, and then you have the jobber, for lack of a better term, or the independent talent, who's potentially somebody that you could use 2 years from now, or a year down the road, 5 years down the road, whatever it may be. You use them sporadically, and it goes back to that slowly introducing the character.
Right.
I know they did that with Dean Ambrose.
Yeah, so many guys would be qualified for it. And if you think now, with the company being around as long as it has, everywhere they go, they have former guys that used to be under contract living in these areas. So if they're doing the loop, and a Val Venus pops up when they're in Phoenix, or a Scotty 2 Hottie when they're in Florida, you're also now going to draw intrigue and interest for people going, oh cool, it's so and so. And
who's going to show up next week?
Yeah, who's going to show up? And so you'll get that nostalgia pop from that guy being there, and then your guy still goes over, and it's now a little more intriguing television than just watching them beat a faceless job guy that's getting eaten up in 3 minutes. So I think there's a fun, fancy way to do it that can intrigue people to watch and actually make them look forward to seeing these squash matches.
Yeah,
I look forward to seeing them personally. I remember I always got excited when I watched wrestling back in 2012, 2013, 2007, up to those years, because I was always excited to see those featured squash matches, because most of the time they all look familiar to me, so I knew who they were. So it's definitely a cool thing to see that back.
Well, we're going to take a commercial break, and we'll get to talking some local wrestling, so some real jobbers, in just a minute.
I go to Muscles by Myers because I trust them.
This staff is phenomenal. You come in, they're always positive, they're always happy to see you.
I walked in there not knowing a thing about supplements, and the staff there showed me everything I need to know.
I lost about 40 pounds and then put on about 10 pounds of muscle.
I've gotten stronger, I have more energy.
I go to Muscles by Myers because they offer great advice, competitive pricing, and they care about helping you achieve your goals.
If I can do it, you can do it.
CWECanada.ca.
.123approved.ca specializes in first-time car loans and negative equity trades. Regardless of your credit past, we can help you get the financing that best suits your needs. To learn more about 123approved.ca or to see what you qualify for, call 204-444-4123 today.
CWE fans, the action and excitement of adrenaline is only the beginning. To get the full CWE experience, check us out on YouTube. There, you can catch up on adrenaline and classic CWE television episodes. Watch The Snake Bit with Jordan Garber, the weekly CWE podcast, promos, our event center, and so much more. Subscribe to the CWE YouTube channel today.
he have that I don't have?
Zubaz.
Rooms and accommodations for CWE events provided by the Travel Lodge.
Give your body the edge in one click with musclesbymyers.com. We have sports supplements, vitamins and minerals for all lifestyles and levels of fitness. And call or email for free one-on-one guidance. Smart buyers shop at Myers and musclesbymyers.com.
How's everybody doing today? How do you become a wrestler? Yeah. The same way you become anything else. You have to go to school and work really, really, really hard.
And we are back, and we're now going to talk some local wrestling, and specifically the career of Michael James Arnott. I was doing the math in my head as I was putting together some questions for myself, and it's been 10 years now you've been involved with local wrestling. You are a bona fide wrestling veteran now.
Oh, man. You know, and I realized this as I was helping to set up the cage for the Primos event the other day. There was only one other guy there who's been around longer than I have. That makes me feel very old.
That's me on a lot of road trips.
10 years, actually 10 years last month.
Does it feel like 10 years?
Some ways yes, some ways no.
It's been a good 10 years for you?
All in all, I'd say so, yeah.
I first met you a little over 10 years ago. You were doing a radio program on CKUW, and you were rounding up some local wrestling guests from time to time. Was it a wrestling program?
Yes, that's not how I started on CKUW. I started doing the news. When they found out that I was a wrestling fan, they badgered me into doing a wrestling radio show. I had no desire to do it. Like I said before, I mean,
what was your original program?
I was doing the morning news.
Okay. Yeah. And they taught you into doing wrestling program, and you weren't too thrilled about doing it?
No, my thought process at the time was there's nothing original that I can talk about that's not already being talked about to death on one of the many internet websites.
Yeah, that's a tough as we notice here on the podcast that we talk about a lot of stuff that's reported on the internet. It's really tough to come up with new original news unless you're right there on the front lines and coming up with it. So how did you get involved with local wrestling then? Was it something you were aware of, or is it something you kind of seeked out being the radio host?
I was vaguely aware of local wrestling. I had attended the first PCW show with Beefcake and Honky Tonk Man and Eddie Guerrero.
In 2002.
Was it 2002?
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
March 3rd, 2002.
Wow. No, I really feel old. So I was aware of local wrestling. What I found out when I started doing the radio show was how little of the local wrestling I was aware of. So that kind of became my focus with the radio show, was local wrestling, because I thought, as a wrestling fan, hey, I like to go to these local shows. It's kind of an alternative to the crap at that time that I thought WWE was. And so I wanted to use that as a vehicle to get the word out for local wrestling.
So I imagine with a wholeheartedly good effort, you said, I want to promote local wrestling and spread the word of this hidden gem that's going on in the city. How long after that did you realize that it's complete insanity and you probably should just stay the heck out?
I think it was probably about 6 months.
What were some of your first experiences with local wrestling that kind of had you on, what the heck did I get myself into?
Wow, well, Mike Davidson comes to mind. He was really my introduction into the wrestling.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He's the one that introduced me to Andrew Shallcross, and that's how I started in PCW. So he was really my foray into the business, and of course at that time the big thing was the Moondog Manson message board, where everybody would go on anonymously and just blast the living shit out of each other. This was my introduction to local wrestling.
Right. So you got in at, it was 2006. At that time, there was like 8 or 9 wrestling promotions in Winnipeg. There was a lot of wrestling going on in a lot of parts of this province, and for the most part, nobody really worked together. How quickly did you have a conflict being a radio host, just unbiasedly trying to promote Winnipeg wrestling as a whole, come into conflict?
Again, I think it was about 6 months, and the incident that comes to mind would have been something to do with Ernie Todd. I can't remember the specifics, but I'm not sure if he took issue with the fact that I focused a lot of the program on PCW wrestling, because that's what I was involved with, that's what I knew, that's what I had access to. Or if there was something else there, but I think, and I could be wrong, Ernie, so please, we've done good these past couple of years. He hasn't defriended me on Facebook.
You might file a lawsuit here.
I'm not sure if he had called the radio station. It may have been him. It may have been somebody else. There were a few. I had a few detractors at that point, so it's kind of hard to really pin it on any one individual.
So you were just, like I said, wholeheartedly trying to promote local wrestling, and Ernie and maybe a few others didn't like the agenda of the program and tried to get the show canceled or called in to complain about the content?
And it wasn't just Ernie, I'll say that. There were definitely others. There were calls of complaints to the radio station. And I would like to clarify that this was before I started swearing profusely on air, which of course led to complaints later on.
And just before you were also intoxicated on air? Like you're pretty straight-laced at this point?
I was pretty straight-laced at the beginning. It was more towards the end where I kind of had to be intoxicated to do that show.
Welcome to Winnipeg Wrestling. Who were some of your memorable guests that you had on? What were some of your enlightening experiences being a radio host, kind of being introduced to local wrestling?
Are we just talking local wrestling or guests in general?
Just in general.
I had Harley Race on the show. That was a huge honor for me.
Not to be confused with Adam Race.
Yes. There was Harley Race. There was somebody you recently had on one of your shows, Barrett Darso, Demolition Smash. He was one of my first interviews. Other than that, I had guys like Buck Bagwell, Honky Tonk Man over the years.
Were they intoxicated on your program?
Honky Tonk was on the phone. He may have been. Kind of hard to tell. I think he's enough of a pro where
I know he was when I interviewed him. So.
And as far as locally, I think I interviewed pretty much anybody that would come on the show. I mean, I had an open forum. People complained a lot back then. Oh well, you don't give us a chance to say our piece. I went on week after week and I said, anybody from Ringmasters Entertainment, they can come on the show, they can say what they want. Oh no, it's just going to be an ambush. Of course, in their defense, the one time we did have somebody from Ringmasters that degenerated into a fist fight on there.
Which I'm going to get to. I want to talk about that today. So you were introduced to the business through PCW. I think I was working at PCW on and off at the time, or relatively on. It was 2006. You started being more involved in the shows, with some ring announcing, if I recall. At any point early in that relationship with PCW, were you encouraged to be more pro PCW, or let's promote PCW over the other guys on your radio program? Did you get kind of roped into any of those politics early?
No, nobody ever told me don't or make the show PCW heavy. It was again, that's what I had access to, and I guess I developed a reputation over time as somebody that people didn't want to come on the show if they weren't affiliated with PCW or WFX or whatever it was that I was doing at the time.
Did you have any horrible guests that were just why did I bring this down? So I've had a couple of rough ones over the years.
And I've sort of said.
No, I said, where do you start?
Oh yeah. Well, there was one, and I don't want to blame it on the guests, but I know that there was the episode with Pinky and Dirks, and that was just terrible.
I don't recall this episode.
Yeah, I vaguely recall it. It's
Was this when you guys went in intoxicated?
Well, no, I think this may have been New Year's Day, so this may have been after an all-night New Year's Eve gimmick, and then deciding to go. Or actually, I had no choice. That's right, I had no choice but to go in because there was nobody. The person that was supposed to be there, taking care of production, wasn't there, so I had to go in. Otherwise, it was going to be dead air.
And still going from the night before.
Yeah. Not a good idea. Not a good idea.
Am I wrong in thinking that Wayne was a co-host at one point?
He was. That was towards the end.
Now Wayne is somebody that I swear was only involved with local wrestling to create the drama within local wrestling. He seemed to enjoy that more than actually the shows itself. How did your relationship with Wayne get started, and what are your memories of working with him on your program?
Well, how did I get started with Wayne? I believe at that point he was intermittently running River City Wrestling. So I eventually, I think I did a couple shows for Wayne. Wayne was actually the person who gave me my first opportunity to be a manager. That's where that started.
Is that when I was booking for Wayne?
I think it may have been.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was kind of my introduction to Wayne. Of course, I had heard a lot about Wayne from others in the business beforehand. Wayne is a character. I don't know whether or not your presumption is accurate or not. Whether he really does just like to stir the pot, or if there's more to that.
He's always so highly entertaining with the way he goes about stirring the pot that if he could find a way to generate and draw money with the shit he causes within the business on an actual wrestling program, I think he would have made a lot of money in the business.
Again, I think that's probably a fairly accurate statement.
He is highly entertaining when he would go on message boards or radio programs and just go at somebody.
Just pure charisma.
Oh, hilarious.
Absolutely. and he could do it in such a way, he could bury somebody in such a way that you wouldn't care. It would be like,
oh, you would opt for it, even if it was you who
absolutely
was blasting. You had no choice but to laugh and appreciate it.
Yeah. And he's a master of turning things around. One thing that I found when he had his own podcast and invited me to co-host with him, which was the last podcast radio type gimmick that I did, he would have a way of pissing me off.
This is while you're the co-host, listen.
Yeah, he would have a way of stirring the pot in such a way that it would come back on me. He would work me up. I would start ranting and raving. I would take all the heat. just a master manipulator, for lack of a better term. And I love Wayne. He's one of my favorite people in the business.
Was he with you to the dying days of the program?
Yes, I believe he was the CKUW program. I believe he was. It was myself, Andrew, and Wayne at the end. And then I think it was just Andrew and Wayne because I finally got shit canned.
What was your, was that because of the fight that happened in the studio?
No, that was the second last straw. The last straw, actually, I had been suspended for that incident, the fist fight. And they let us back on air, pardon me, but on one condition, that condition being that I could not go on air live. There was a situation, and I had to go on live. Again, it was either an hour of dead air, or I go on live. So I went on live. I controlled myself throughout the program. That wasn't the issue, but they found out that I went on live, and that was it.
So let's talk about the fist fight, because that's probably the most infamous story from your time as a radio host. 10 years later, it is still remembered and talked about to this day. Give us the play-by-play. What happened?
I wish I had a recording of that. I think that would I could never do it justice. And again, memory being a little hazy of that period of time. What I remember is it was myself, Andrew Shallcross, Wayne Stanton. We were hosting the show, and it was Dirty Dick Walker. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yep, that's
Dirty
right.
Dick Walker. He was our guest in the studio. I believe the one and only time a Ringmasters entertainment performer came on our show. And again, this was years of me offering the invitation for somebody from that organization to come on the show. Dirty Dick Walker. So he comes on the show. Him and Andrew get into it about booking. Andrew made some derogatory comments about Bugsy Slug's booking of the Ringmaster shows. Apparently Dick Walker and Bugsy Slug were pretty darn close, because Dick Walker took that personally, and the next thing I know, he's taking a swing at Andrew. All hell is breaking loose. I don't think he did. If he did, he didn't catch it very hard. I think Wayne was in the middle of them. I seem to recall yelling something out, get the hell out of the way, Wayne Stanton, or.
And this was live?
Yeah, this was live. So much so that University of Winnipeg security had to come out. Luckily, University of Winnipeg security at that time happened to be another local wrestler, so we had a little bit of a pass in that regard.
What was the result of the fight? Did somebody end up leaving the studio? Was it calmed down? I don't remember.
I don't remember either. I think that was pretty much the end of the radio show. I think we were probably already, we were in our last 5 or 10 minutes as it was, so I think that was just the end of the program.
Local wrestlers were throwing fists over sometimes. So let's talk a little bit more about your career. Once that radio show ended, you did spend some time at WFX as well, which would then go on to be kind of a competitor, so to speak, a competitor in quotation marks because it's local wrestling. With PCW, but you did spend some time working with WFX. Mm-hmm. What was the thought process behind kind of distancing yourself from PCW to work more directly with Mike Davidson?
I didn't distance myself from PCW, and actually at that time...
Were they working together at that time?
They were, and I was the one who initiated that between Andrew and Mike. I had been harping on them both. You guys should patch up your differences. You should have a conversation. I won't take all the credit. I think it was Shane Madison who eventually got them in the same room or got them speaking. But I like to think that I was the one who planted that seed. And when WFX started in, I believe, September of 2007, Andrew and Mike were on speaking terms, and we were doing cross promotion at that time. I believe, I don't know if it was that first WFX show that...
That's right, because Black Pearl did a PCW show.
Yeah, and Brian Christopher.
Yes.
Brian Christopher and Black Pearl, and I believe that was the first WFX show in 2007.
Correct. Yeah. So this happened. Your relationship with Mike didn't last too much longer, if I'm not mistaken. Did not?
My business relationship with Mike or my personal relationship?
A little bit of both. Did you work with WFX for a while? That kind of closed up shop there for a while.
Yeah, and then it was March, April 2008 where their initial run officially came to an end, and then I know he went on to do more with WFX later on. When did my business relationship end with Mike? I think my business relationship ended at the same time as our personal relationship, which was later on, and he wasn't. I don't think he had anything to do with the local business at that point. But that was still before he went on to do WFX a second time.
Are you at liberty to say what caused the wedge between the two of you? The man who brought you into the business?
I have no problem. He tried to bury me. And I'm not talking about
So what he does with
wrestling.
everybody.
I'm not talking about local wrestling. He tried to bury me at my shoot job, and that to me is unacceptable. That's a line that you don't cross. Simple. And he tried to bury me with my now ex, but future girlfriend at that time. So these are things, and I can handle that. I can handle being buried with a woman, but when you try to get me fired from my job, you're a dick.
Mike's very much like Wayne in that regard. That he kind of thrives on that emotion with people and likes to stir that pot and kind of play the puppeteer sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So since then, you've minus a small run with CWE in our early days, which was 2009, you've been pretty exclusive to PCW, doing some work with Primos as well.
Mm-hmm.
What's your relationship like with Andrew? That you've been so close and tight with him for all these years, nearly 10 years now.
Yeah, I have an excellent relationship with Andrew. He's somebody that I consider to be a friend, which is, in this business is pretty rare. I get along with Andrew. I have a certain amount of freedom working for Andrew. He treats me well. I have no complaints, and it's for me. I'm beyond the point of looking to make a career in the wrestling business. I mean, I never really had that as a goal. So it's not like I'm looking to expand. You go out on tour, you take CWE, all across Canada or Western Canada at least. I have no. First of all, I don't have the time to be able to do that kind of traveling for wrestling, and it's not in the cards for me. Wrestling won't be a career for me, so it's a comfortable spot. I do the PCW shows, I do the Primo shows. I have a little bit of involvement, but it's not. My life doesn't revolve around it, and I like to be conscious of other people in the business. I don't want to stick around if I'm going to take a spot away from somebody who maybe does want to pursue a career in the business, right? I'll stick around as long as I feel that I can be useful, and that's pretty much it. But if I feel that my spot would be better suited for somebody like Jordan Garber or whoever, I would have no problem stepping aside.
Even if you tried holding on to that spot, I think Jordan Garber has the ability to take it.
I may not have a choice.
You wouldn't have a choice. You slither right on in there and you'll take what's his. You've been offered over the years, like I mentioned, you started with CWE in 2009. You did, our very first few shows. I don't think our very first, but you did a small program with Wade Stanton, of all people.
Yeah.
And it was very successful. And over time, there's been some, small discussions here and there about you possibly coming to do some more work with CWE, but it's just never panned out. What's kept you away for so long?
Well, first of all, you haven't asked me in quite some time. There's that.
You always tell me no.
And every time, and that's the other thing is every time you ask me, I think I kind of go back and forth, and it's like, yeah, I'll come over, and then I pull the plug on it. And that's that's not exactly business.
I've always thought you'd be, a good addition in various facets that we've talked about over time, whether it be the TV aspect or a managerial aspect, and I sincerely do believe that. I think you're very talented at what you do, and could be a great addition to any show you're on. It just never worked out. And I always felt we have a great crew you could work with. Is there any specific reason?
I don't think that there's a specific reason. I think we all know. I think we all know where you're going with that question, and is there? I think it would be. How do I? Now I'm trying to be diplomatic.
You want to say it? I mean,
There's heat.
You know what he's insinuating.
There's heat. There's heat between PCW and CWE. That's the way it has been since.
I have
pretty much since day one.
I have to.
And Andrew says the exact same thing. So go figure.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I've always thought. I don't know why he has it out for us so bad, in the sense that I've always allowed guys to go and work there, and then when we try to get guys to return, the favor if they want to come over and work, the door has always been open, and we've always booked them very well. Like, I think Antonio Silva Jr. is our tag team champion right now. I think in his first match, we put him over on Scott Steiner when he came back 2 years ago. I've always booked people on the basis, if I'm booking you on my show and paying you, I'm doing it to be a benefit to my show, not to use you poorly. I don't have the money to throw around to do things for my own amusement.
And again, to clarify, it's not, there is heat there, but, their PCW guys have done CWE shows and vice versa. I know the Londons did your shows a couple of years ago, and of course, like you say, Scorpio.
Mantelo was doing both for a long time. I believe him and Tyler Colton at one point were by tag team champions and working those shows regularly.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never had an issue with it. I've never understood why it was such a difficulty on the reverse end.
I can't speak to that, and I can't. And again, you're saying that the problem is on Andrew's end, and I don't know if that's the case or not. You're going to try to babyface here on your own webcast, and just like Andrew would do if this were his webcast. So that goes both ways. It's I think Andrew would be a great guest to have here.
Oh, of course.
To talk about.
I've even offered Andrew to be in our Rumble Tour member a couple of years in a row, and I sincerely meant it when I did offer it to him. I don't ask to put you in an uncomfortable position. I think it should be awkward not to ask why you haven't been on CWE.
Oh no, absolutely. And again, it comes down to the timing. I mean, I for all intents and purposes retired a few months back. That lasted about 6 months. My interest in the business is not where it used to be. It's
and I also do ask in the sense that some guys do both and others choose not to and ask not to. So that was more so just asking your personal preference on
for
that.
me. I have a lot on my plate right now with both PCW and Primos. I've when I came back this most recent, I came back a few months ago after doing a little bit of traveling, and I said to myself in New York City, that cheap little pop in there. When I was in New York, I said to myself, well, if I do go back, I want to be more involved in what I'm doing. And that's what I'm trying to do. That's what I'm trying to do with Primos right now, is be more involved, help out in different ways, be a little more active behind the scenes, but put more energy into what I'm doing, as opposed to looking at expanding into other avenues like CWE or.
And that's a good attitude to have. You have to enjoy and be invested where you are, and that's always been my gripe with a lot of guys locally, is they show up to any show, not just CWE or any show they're on, and it's like, oh, I gotta be here today. Then why be here? Like I always felt that local wrestling or independent wrestling as a whole is gonna strive if you have a team from the top of the card to the bottom of the card to the guys backstage that are invested in seeing it grow and are passionate about seeing it grow, and they're not just there to have their hand out and collect $20 and go about their day when they're all done. You need a team of people that are passionate about the business and they love wrestling, because the fans can see that. When you've got a crew of guys that loves going out there and performing and they're passionate about what they do and growing the brand, it's contagious, and that's how it builds and that's how it grows. That's a great attitude to have. Let's wrap up the program. You've been around for 10 years now. Greatest5.com, our sponsor, asks, who are the greatest 5 wrestlers in Winnipeg you've seen in your 10-year tenure?
Well, the top 5 that I've seen, Kenny Omega, Mantelo, those two of course stand out right off the bat. Other than that, it's tough. I haven't seen you wrestle in quite some time.
I'm still the shits.
I enjoyed your matches in the past when you probably legitimately were the shits. So I'm presuming that you've gotten a little better. I've heard that your matches are very good. I do have sources that attend your shows, and
stooges or sources?
Little column A, little column B. And I've heard that you're one of the highlights. I love the Mr. Perfect singlet. That is phenomenal. Other than that, performers that I enjoy watching, I always enjoyed AJ Sanchez. He was one of my favorites. Robbie Royce, when I first broke in, he was always entertaining to watch. Always just really put his everything into his matches. I think that puts me up to what, 4? That's 4. So now we need a 5th. I hate doing these because I'm going to leave I'm bound to leave somebody out. So who is a standout in Winnipeg wrestling? And I'm drawing a blank now. So
I know you don't want to say Mark Merrick because you work for him and people think you're kissing ass. So I will let you not say Mark Merrick.
There we go. I'm off the hook on that one. Again, just off the top of my head, Kevy Chevy's another one that I really enjoyed watching when I first spoke. You know what? And I completely forgot Vinko.
Yeah.
Vinko,
yes.
as far as I'm concerned, is the single most entertaining person in Winnipeg wrestling since I've been around.
One of the most entertaining human beings in Winnipeg.
He really is. Vinko. The first time I saw Vinko, I was just, I was smitten because here is something his character is unique. He is, again, so charismatic. Just a phenomenal performer. So Vinko goes to the top of that list.
I agree with you. I love Vinko. Let's finish the program off. Here's your chance to shill and plug your upcoming dates. See, not just CWE. What do you got coming up? Where can people see me, Mike Arnott live?
Oh wow, I think August 13th. God, I hope that's right. Premier Championship Wrestling, Doubles Fun Club, and I'm not sure when the next Primo show is yet. I'm not sure if I can say this or not, so I'm going to say it anyway. Hopefully I don't catch too much heat. Primos may have a show the night of SummerSlam.
Oh, cool.
And, more details to come on that. A new venue for Primos. And of course we'll still be at Churchill United Church. Our next event will be coming up, I believe, in September. If there is a date, I'm not aware of it right now. But I'm not sure if there is.
And your social media, where can people follow you?
Social media, I don't really do the social media thing. If you want to follow me on Facebook, you can follow me on Facebook, which is kind of a hodgepodge of my personal life and my wrestling posts.
Are you on Tinder as well?
Recently, yeah.
Yeah? Good?
No, not at all. Just a drizzling shit.
You have to partner up with the garbage.
That and plenty of fish, too. No luck.
Remember the match I got on the
But again, I'm not putting too much effort into it.
Partner up and hit like a threesome or something.
What's that?
You can hit like a group chat now.
Oh, there we go.
I think that's on Tinder now. They have the
Really?
social thing, so you can go to a party with all the groups.
Social, but quote unquote, it's for a threesome.
How do you line that up?
I have
That's right on Tinder, or it's like
I
a
have
different
it-
app?
No, right on Tinder.
Right on Tinder,
Yes.
you
Well, you'll see on your match screen, there's like 3 different people, and then it's like, pick this group, and then they are notified that you're going out with them for the night.
Appears now. So instead of it's just, how it's one person,
Yeah.
it's a group now. Don't ask, I'm not,
I
I'm
know
gonna,
to be.
yeah, I'm gonna shoot relationships. I don't know.
You're gonna have to hang out with the garbage snake. He's got Tinder down to a science. He's got matches all over the
Hot
time.
matches on there.
You just gotta work on his,
You just gotta keep liking a bunch of hot chicks on there, and eventually.
Oh, see, maybe that's my problem. I'm a little too picky.
Throw that quality control out the window. Yeah. Well, we're gonna throw this podcast out the window and wrap it up for tonight. Thanks, Mike Arnott, for joining us and talking some professional wrestling. And we'll be back next week with part 2 with Bring the Pain, Matt Fairlane. We'll see you then.